Hello and welcome to Benefits Weekly. We're your hosts, Kyle Estep and Eric Johnson. If you work in health insurance and employee benefits, we are your go-to resource for taking complex topics and making them easy to understand. All right, our topic this week are health savings accounts, or HSAs, and the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. Now, it's debatable depending on your politics, and we're not going to go there on whether or not you consider it beautiful, but it's certainly a big bill. And there were lots of things stuffed in there, particularly in our world of health insurance and benefits. And so as we think about HSAs, Eric, spoiler alert, but didn't you used to work at an HSA administrator?
Did. I spent about 3 years working for an administrator and have promoted HSAs longer than that and am a card carrying member. So I do feel that I've got at least a little bit of insight on this topic.
Well, good. Now, I will admit I have an HSA. I'm probably not as diligent in contributing to it as I should be, if I'm being honest. But I'm glad I've got you here to help us, get educated on this topic. So I'm going to hand it to you. Tell us what was in the One Big Beautiful Bill Act.
So there were a few things. There were quite a few proposed changes to HSAs. That's actually one of the things we talk about in the article this week, what made it in, what did not. Ultimately, there were three changes that did make it into the bill. One is that now telehealth, even with a $0 copayment or a flat copayment that's less than the full cost of the service, can be offered prior to the minimum HSA deductible, and it will not disqualify the plan. Prior to COVID, there was always a debate about whether or not upfront telehealth access did disqualify HSA eligibility. Congress kind of answered that question by when COVID hit, they said for a period of time it won't, and then they extended it, and that was set to expire in 2025. So that is now a permanent change. So upfront telehealth is an eligible, well, not an eligible expense, that it can be offered with an HSA qualified plan without hurting HSA eligibility.
Well, and I love this. I'll tell you, 10 plus years ago, when we were first starting out building Oscar Health, one of our big things we wanted to do to be member friendly was provide free and unlimited telemedicine on all of the plan options. And we quickly ran into this roadblock back in the day where we had, people who wanted to maybe enroll with our plans, but then they said, wait a second, I can't contribute to an HSA if I choose one of your plan options because they all have free telemedicine. So we had to figure out ways to work around this. And it was a giant pain for everyone involved. So I'm really glad that this one's getting fixed. What else was in there?
Yeah, and just on the telehealth thing, I mean, it makes sense simply because of the fact that you're already taking away the upfront co-payments, replacing them with something that allows consumers to get some care when they need it does make sense. The other big change that was offered in this bill is direct primary care. So it was kind of in the same boat as telehealth in that it was a little unclear whether or not somebody who was part of a direct primary care relationship who was paying a monthly fee to be able to see a doctor, if that arrangement would disqualify HSA eligibility. The answer is yes. Not everybody believed that or agreed with it. But this, the One Big Beautiful Bill, not only does it say that you can have a DPC membership, direct primary care membership, and still contribute to an HSA, you can actually pay a portion of that membership fee with HSA dollars. So that's now an eligible expense.
That's awesome. I feel like direct primary care is one of, I would say, like the top 5 kind of buzzwords and topics that I've been hearing in benefits circles over the last half decade, and it doesn't seem to be going anywhere. My guess is this will only throw kind of more fuel on the fire as we continue to see that model of care and how it gets packaged into benefits accelerate.
Yeah, it probably is a big part of the future of healthcare, and so making it friendly with HSAs, I think, is a good thing.
Probably going to be a good topic for a future Benefits Weekly. We need to unpack what the heck direct primary care is at some point.
Absolutely. Third change is an interesting one. It wasn't one that I was expecting them to to include, but it is that somebody who purchases an individual plan through the health insurance marketplace, if they buy a bronze or silver plan, it will now be considered HSA compatible, even if it doesn't meet the definition of a high deductible health plan. So it could have a deductible that is higher than the allowed HDHP limit, or it could even have upfront copayments without disqualifying it from HSA eligibility.
This one's worth pausing on for a moment because I just think it speaks to the ridiculousness of our industry sometimes and how, if we get confused with these things as professionals, I'm sure the average Joe is absolutely lost. But just to unpack this for a moment, when HSAs were created,
Mhm.
I think the IRS was tasked with deciding, year to year, what are going to be the rules for determining whether a plan is a qualified high deductible health plan or qualified HDHP. That happens, probably more about the history when that became law, Eric, but then you fast forward to the ACA, which got passed in 2010, and it set up a separate set of criteria for establishing these bronze, silver, gold plans on the exchanges. Well, over time, we've seen the rules there kind of drift apart. And so I looked up this stat right before we filmed. A bronze plan in 2025
Mhm.
on the exchange has a maximum out of pocket limit of $9,200. However, the IRS for a qualified high deductible health plan says the MOOP can only be $8,300. In other words, bronze plans, their deductibles and their MOOPs are too high to be considered high deductible health plans, which blows your mind a little bit. I'm glad we're getting some simplification here in the rules.
Yeah, it's definitely a badly named, plan type. And just very quick story. Roy Ramthan, who a lot of people call the father of HSAs, he was over in Treasury when the HSA law was passed. He made the mistake of sitting next to me at a dinner one night, and I was pummeling him with questions. And one of them was, why in the world did you call it a high deductible health plan? And he said that was a term they were using when they were writing the bill. It was not supposed to be in the final legislation. It wasn't supposed to get out of the beltway, and it actually slipped out, I guess, and became the official term. But it's not a very user-friendly term, and it's really inaccurate.
Yeah, well, and especially as we've seen deductibles and MOOPs ratchet up over the
Mhm.
years, it's in the eye of the beholder whether or not you feel that deductible is high, and most people feel the deductible is pretty high. But of course, that doesn't mean it meets this IRS definition of an HSA compatible plan. So that's a great. I
Exactly.
love that fun fact.
Like I said, a few things didn't make it into the bill, into the final version, but they had been suggested. Things like allowing spouses over the age of 55 to contribute the catch-up contributions to the same HSA, or allowing somebody who has Medicare A but not B to go ahead and contribute to an HSA if they have a qualified plan, since the Part A deductible is about the same as a minimum HSA qualified plan deductible. Those were not included in the final version, unfortunately. But we do list all of those things that were proposed, and they may pop up again in this week's piece. We also do show what the contribution limits are, and minimum deductible, maximum out of pocket, and so forth for 2026.
Well, that's a great kind of note to end it on. We've got our piece out there this week for you to dive in a little bit more. Thanks again for tuning into Benefits Weekly. Take a look at that topic we pulled together. Let us know what you think. And as always, if you find it valuable, please share it with a friend.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.